The expedition began on a humid July morning, the kind that soaked the air in a palpable haze, making everything appear as if it was encased in shimmering glass. A team of archaeologists and geologists led by Dr. Marcus Reed had gathered at the entrance of a cavern known as the Abyssal Depths, located in a remote area of the Appalachian Mountains. The cavern, a gaping maw in the earth, had long been rumoured to lead to untold secrets, whispers of an ancient civilization hidden beneath the surface for centuries. Dr. Reed, a man in his early 40s with tousled hair and an insatiable curiosity, looked over his team. There was Sarah, the sharp-witted ethnobotanist, Tom, the burly geologist with a passion for rock formations, and Emily, a brilliant young linguist, eager to decode any inscriptions they might find. Each team member carried an air of excitement and apprehension, aware that they stood on the precipice of a discovery that could alter history. As they descended into the cavern, the air grew cooler, and the sound of dripping water echoed ominously around them. The light from their headlamps cast ghostly shadows on the walls, revealing veins of glittering minerals embedded in the stone. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the atmosphere became, as if the earth itself was holding its breath. "Keep your eyes peeled," Dr. Reed called back to the group, his voice echoing slightly. "This place has been untouched for centuries. We could find anything down here." After hours of navigating through winding tunnels and cavernous rooms, they stumbled upon a massive stone door covered in intricate carvings. The carvings depicted figures with elongated limbs and featureless faces surrounded by strange symbols that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. "Look at this!" Emily exclaimed, her fingers tracing the carvings. "These are unlike anything I've ever seen before." "What do you think it means?" Sarah asked, stepping closer to examine the symbols. "Maybe it's a warning," Tom suggested, his brow furrowed. "Or perhaps a record of their beliefs." The team stood in hushed reverence before the door, each member lost in their thoughts. Dr. Reed felt an inexplicable pull towards it, as if the door itself was calling to him. Ignoring the instinctual feeling of dread creeping up his spine, he took a step forward and pressed against the cold stone. To their astonishment, the door creaked open, revealing a vast chamber beyond. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and decay. They stepped inside, their lights illuminating the remnants of what appeared to be a grand hall adorned with crumbling pillars and ancient mosaics that told stories of a long-forgotten civilization. As they explored the hall, the team marveled at the remnants of a once thriving society. Elaborate murals depicted scenes of daily life, rituals, and celestial events. Each image was meticulously detailed, showcasing the civilization's craftsmanship and artistry. "Can you imagine what this place was like in its prime?" Sarah mused, her eyes wide with wonder. "Judging by these artifacts, they were highly advanced," Tom replied, examining a strange device that resembled a compass but had more intricate mechanics. "This could have been used for navigation or perhaps even communication." Dr. Reed led the team deeper into the ruins, their excitement building with every step. They stumbled upon a series of chambers, each filled with relics, pottery, tools, and strange objects that defied explanation. Among them was a large stone tablet, inscribed with symbols that Emily eagerly began to translate. "This language is fascinating," she said, her brow furrowed in concentration. "It appears to be a mix of pictographs and cuneiform. It might take me a while to decode." "Take your time," Dr. Reed encouraged, glancing at the others. "We need to document everything we find here. This could change our understanding of human history." But as they worked, an uneasy feeling began to settle over the group. The shadows in the chamber seemed to shift and grow, and the air felt charged with an unseen energy. Dr. Reed dismissed the sensation, attributing it to the excitement of discovery. However, as they delved further into the ruins, the atmosphere grew heavier, and whispers seemed to echo through the halls. It was on the third day of their exploration when they first encountered something truly unsettling. As Emily deciphered more of the inscriptions, she stumbled upon a series of warnings that sent chills down her spine. "The text speaks of a great darkness that lies beneath," she said, her voice trembling. "It warns of a great awakening and the hunger of the ancients." "Hunger," Tom echoed, a frown creasing his brow. "What do you think that means?" "Maybe it's just metaphorical," Sarah suggested, though her voice lacked at conviction. "Perhaps they were referring to the loss of their civilization or resources." Dr. Reed felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "Let's not jump to conclusions. We need more context before we start interpreting these warnings." But as the days wore on, strange occurrences began to unfold. Equipment malfunctioned without explanation. The ground trembled beneath them, and shadows darted just out of the corner of their eyes. One night, as they gathered around a small campfire in one of the chambers, a sense of dread enveloped them. "I keep hearing things," Tom confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. "Footsteps. Whispers. It feels like we're being watched." "Stop it," Sarah replied, a nervous laugh escaping her lips. "You're just imagining things. We're alone down here." But Dr. Reed couldn't shake the feeling that they were not alone. Every time he turned a corner, he felt as if something lurked just beyond his vision, watching and waiting. Despite their unease, the team pressed on, driven by their insatiable curiosity. They discovered more chambers, each filled with increasingly disturbing relics. One room was lined with skeletal remains, their bodies twisted in agony, as if frozen in their last moments of terror. The walls were covered in the same symbols that had adorned the entrance, but now they appeared more chaotic and frenzied. "What happened to them?" Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "This isn't just a burial site, it's a warning." "Or a sacrifice," Tom added grimly. "Maybe they were trying to appease whatever lies beneath." Dr. Reed felt a surge of panic. The warnings in the inscriptions echoed in his mind, and the idea of a great awakening sent chills down his spine. He couldn't help but wonder what they had awakened by trespassing into these sacred grounds. That night, the team gathered for a tense meeting. Each member voiced their growing fears, their excitement now tinged with dread. "I think we should turn back," Emily finally suggested, her voice shaking. Whatever this civilization was hiding, it wasn't just their history. "We can't leave now," Dr. Reed replied, his determination flaring. "We're on the brink of a discovery that could rewrite history. We owe it to ourselves and to the world to uncover the truth." Reluctantly, the team agreed to stay for one more day. But as they settled in for the night, the shadows seemed to grow taller, and the whispers grew louder, surrounding them in an oppressive shroud. The next day, as they explored deeper into the ruins, the air grew heavy with a palpable sense of foreboding. They stumbled upon an enormous chamber, its ceiling lost in darkness, and in the center stood a massive stone altar stained with what appeared to be dried blood. "What the hell is this?" Sarah breathed, stepping closer to inspect the altar. "It looks like some sort of sacrificial site," Tom murmured, his voice low. "This is what they were afraid of." Dr. Reed approached the altar, drawn by an unseen force. As he reached out to touch the cold stone, a low rumble echoed through the chamber, and the ground trembled beneath their feet. They all stumbled back, fear flooding their senses. "What was that?" Emily shouted, her eyes wide with terror. "I don't know, but we need to get out of here," Dr. Reed urged, turning to lead the group back. But before they could leave, the walls began to glow with an eerie luminescence, illuminating the chamber with a sickly green light. As they watched in horror, the symbols on the walls twisted and writhed as if alive, coalescing into a singular form. A shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, towering over them with hollow eyes that seemed to suck in the light around it. Panic surged through the group as they backed away from the figure. It spoke in a voice that reverberated through their bones, a deep, rumbling sound that seemed to echo from the very depths of the earth. "You dare to disturb the slumber of the ancients?" it intoned, each word dripping with malice. Dr. Reed's heart raced as he realized the implications of their discovery. The civilization they had uncovered was not merely a remnant of the past, it was a warning of a power that had lain dormant for centuries, waiting for the foolish to awaken it. We didn't mean to intrude," Dr. Reed stammered, his voice barely audible over the roar of his heartbeat. "We just wanted to understand." "Understanding is not for the unworthy," the figure hissed, its form shifting and twisting in the darkness. "You shall pay for your trespass." With a sudden surge of power, the figure unleashed a wave of energy that sent the team crashing against the walls. Darkness enveloped them, and the world spun out of control. Dr. Reed felt his consciousness slipping, the whispers of the ancients wrapping around him like a shroud. When Dr. Reed awoke, he found himself alone in the chamber, the air thick with silence. He scrambled to his feet, panic rising in his throat as he called out for his team. "Sarah, Tom, Emily," he shouted, his voice echoing against the cold stone. But there was no response. He stumbled through the ruins, desperately searching for any sign of his colleagues. Each chamber he entered was empty, the remnants of the civilization looming around him like specters of the past. The realization struck him like a physical blow. They were gone. They had been swallowed by the darkness, victims of the very secret they sought to unveil. Days passed in a haze of despair as Dr. Reed wandered through the labyrinthine tunnels, haunted by the echoes of his team's voices. He could feel the presence of the ancients lurking in the shadows, their whispers a constant reminder of his failure. The ground trembled beneath him, and the walls seemed to close in, suffocating him in their grasp. He began to see visions of his colleagues, their faces twisted in fear as they pleaded for his help. Each time he reached out to them, they dissolved into shadows, leaving him alone in the darkness. "You are the last of your kind," the voice of the figure echoed in his mind. "You shall become one with the void." Despair turned to madness as the isolation weighed heavily on his sanity. He began to lose track of time, the days blending into nights as he wandered through the ruins, desperate for a way out. The whispers grew louder, urging him to join the ancients, to embrace the darkness that had claimed his friends. Finally, in a moment of clarity, Dr. Reed stumbled upon a hidden chamber, its entrance obscured by rubble. Inside, he discovered a massive mural depicting the civilization's downfall. The images showed the ancients, once proud and powerful, consumed by their own greed and desire for knowledge. They had delved too deep into forbidden secrets, awakening a force that had brought about their destruction. "The hunger of the ancients," he whispered, realization dawning upon him. The very thing they sought to uncover was the reason for their demise. Dr. Reed's mind raced as he connected the dots. The sacrifices, the warnings. They had not only been protecting themselves, but also the world above, from a force that craved destruction. The Great Awakening was not just a prophecy, it was a reality, and he had played a part in it. With newfound determination, Dr. Reed knew he had to escape. He had to warn the world above of the horrors that lay beneath. But as he retraced his steps, the shadows grew more aggressive, clawing at him, whispering promises of power and knowledge. "Join us," they urged, their voices a seductive lullaby. "Embrace the darkness." But he resisted, fueled by the memory of his team. He had to honor their sacrifice. He pushed through the darkness, racing towards the exit, the walls trembling as if in anger at his defiance. Finally, he reached the stone door they had first encountered. With all his strength, he pushed against it, and to his relief, it creaked open, revealing the way back to the surface. As he emerged into the blinding light of day, the weight of the darkness lifted, but the memories of his friends lingered like ghosts. He turned back to the cavern, a silent promise on his lips to return one day, to ensure that the secrets buried within would remain undisturbed. Back in the safety of the world above, Dr. Reed dedicated himself to studying the ancient civilization they had uncovered. But every night, he was haunted by visions of the dark figure and the whispers of the ancients, the promise of power lingering in the back of his mind. Months passed, and he began to piece together a theory. The ancients had not only been protecting themselves, but also guarding the world against their own creation. It was a force of unimaginable power, a darkness that thrived on knowledge and ambition. Realizing the danger was far from over, Dr. Reed sought to rally others to his cause. He began gathering a new team, this time with experts in various fields, determined to prevent anyone from making the same mistakes he had. "We need to seal the entrance," he insisted, during a meeting with potential recruits. "We cannot let anyone else stumble upon this place. It must be forgotten." But there were skeptics, those who craved the knowledge hidden within the ruins, and they questioned whether sealing the cavern was truly the right course of action. Tensions rose as Dr. Reed battled against those who sought to exploit the very secrets he aimed to protect. Unbeknownst to Dr. Reed, a cult had emerged in the shadows, a group dedicated to awakening the power of the ancients. They believed that the knowledge hidden beneath the earth was the key to transcending human limitations, and they would stop at nothing to access it. Their leader, a charismatic figure known only as the Seeker, began recruiting followers, weaving tales of power and immortality. The cult grew in number, drawing in those disillusioned with the mundane existence of their lives. "The ancients possess the secrets to unlock our true potential," the Seeker preached, his voice dripping with conviction. "Join me and we will awaken the power that lies beneath." As whispers of the cult reached Dr. Reed, he knew he had to act quickly. He gathered his new team and headed back to the abyssal depths, determined to seal the entrance before the cult could unleash the horrors that lay within. The journey back to the cavern was fraught with tension. Dr. Reed felt the weight of his previous failures pressing down on him as they approached the entrance. The air was thick with anticipation, and he could sense the darkness lurking just beneath the surface. As they descended into the abyssal depths, the atmosphere felt different, charged with energy, as if the very earth was alive with the promise of chaos. They navigated the tunnels with caution, their headlamps flickering as if the darkness sought to extinguish their light. "We need to hurry," Dr. Reed urged, leading the way. The cult could be here any moment. But just as they reached the massive stone door, they were met by a group of robed figures, their faces hidden in shadow. The Seeker stood at the forefront, a smirk playing on his lips. "You're too late, Dr. Reed," he said, his voice a mocking whisper. "The time of awakening is at hand." Before Dr. Reed could react, the cultists surged forward, chanting incantations that echoed through the cavern. The ground trembled violently, and the air crackled with energy as the darkness began to rise. "We must seal the entrance," Dr. Reed shouted to his team, but the cultists were relentless, their power feeding off the very darkness they sought to unleash. The chamber erupted into chaos as cultists clashed with Dr. Reed's team. Energy surged around them, lighting the chamber with another worldly glow. Dr. Reed fought against the tide of darkness, his mind racing with the implications of their actions. "We have to stop them!" he yelled, desperation fueling his strength. As the battle raged on, the shadows writhed and twisted, forming shapes that echoed the nightmares he had experienced during his isolation. He could hear the whispers of the ancients, urging him to join them, to embrace the power that lay within. But he resisted, pushing through the chaos. With every ounce of strength, he reached for the altar, desperate to reverse the awakening. The room shook violently as the cultists' chants grew louder, drowning out the cries of his team. In a moment of clarity, he grasped the stone tablet they had uncovered during their first exploration, its symbols glowing with energy. He raised it high, shouting words of defiance, against the darkness that sought to consume them all. The moment the tablet touched the altar, a blinding light erupted from the chamber, engulfing everyone within. The cultists screamed as the energy surged, pushing back against the shadows that had claimed their power. "This ends now," Dr. Reed roared, channeling his will into the tablet. The light expanded, consuming the darkness and the shadows of the cultists, forcing them to retreat. The Seeker's face contorted with rage as he tried to maintain his grip on the power they had sought to awaken. "You cannot stop what is meant to be," he yelled, but Dr. Reed remained steadfast, the light enveloping him and his team, forging a barrier between them and the chaos. As the energy surged, the voices of the ancients filled the chamber, a cacophony of anguish and fury. They had been disturbed once more, and their wrath was palpable. In a final surge of power, the light exploded outward, washing over the chamber and sealing the entrance behind them. The cavern shuddered, the ancient stones cracking as the darkness was pushed back into the depths. When the light finally faded, Dr. Reed and his team found themselves standing in the now silent chamber. The remnants of the cult scattered and defeated. The Seeker was nowhere to be seen, consumed by the very darkness he had sought to control. Breathless and trembling, Dr. Reed looked around at his team, relief flooding through him. They had survived, but at what cost? "We need to get out of here," he said, his voice shaking. "We must ensure this place is never disturbed again." With heavy hearts, they retraced their steps, leaving behind the remnants of the ancient civilization. The walls of the cavern felt different now, as if they were mourning the loss of their secrets, a promise unfulfilled. As they reached the surface, the sun broke through the trees, illuminating the world above. Dr. Reed felt a sense of closure wash over him, but the knowledge of what lay beneath would haunt him forever. In the months that followed, Dr. Reed dedicated himself to studying the events that had transpired in the abyssal depths. He knew that the truth of the ancient civilization and the darkness they had uncovered needed to be documented, not just for himself but for the world. With his team by his side, he published their findings, warning others of the dangers that lay hidden beneath the earth. They held lectures spreading awareness of the fragile balance between knowledge and power, urging future explorers to tread carefully. But even as he spoke, Dr. Reed could feel the shadows lurking at the edges of his mind, whispers echoing in the silence of the night. The darkness they had encountered would never truly be gone. It was a part of the Earth's history, a legacy that would linger long after they had sealed the entrance. As years passed, Dr. Reed continued his work, but the memory of the abyssal depths never left him. He often found himself drawn back to the mountains, staring into the depths of the cavern that had changed his life forever. Despite the closure he had sought, he couldn't shake the feeling that the ancients were still watching, that their hunger had not been satiated. Whispers haunted his dreams, echoing the warning he had once heard. One stormy night, as he sat alone in his office, the power flickered and died. Darkness enveloped him, and he felt a chill creep into his bones. "You cannot escape the past," a voice echoed in the shadows, a familiar whisper that sent shivers down his spine. Dr. Reed's heart raced as he glanced around the room, but he was alone, or so he thought. The shadows in the corners seemed to thicken, and the air grew heavy with the weight of unspoken truths. As the world outside continued to spin in its mundane rhythm, Dr. Reed knew that the ancients' warning still held weight. He began receiving reports of strange occurrences near the mountains, disappearances, whispers in the wind, and sightings of shadowy figures lurking in the woods. Determined to investigate, he gathered a new team of researchers and headed back to the site of the abyssal depths, armed with a renewed sense of purpose and a lingering dread. "We need to find out what's happening," he said to his team as they approached the cavern. "The darkness is awakening again." As they descended into the depths, the air grew thick with anticipation. The walls seemed to pulse, as if alive with energy, and the whispers grew louder, echoing through the chambers. "Stay close," Dr. Reed warned, his heart pounding. "We don't know what we're going to find." Once inside the cavern, they encountered remnants of the cult's activities, rituals marked by dark symbols and offerings left at the altar. Panic surged through the group as they realized the darkness had not only returned, but had gained strength. "We have to stop this," Dr. Reed urged, rallying his team. "We can't let them awaken whatever lies beneath." As they worked to dismantle the cult's rituals, the ground trembled and the chamber erupted with energy. Shadows swirled around them, and the figure of the Seeker emerged from the darkness, his eyes burning with rage. "You cannot stop the Great Awakening," he bellowed, his voice echoing through the chamber. Dr. Reed and his team fought back against the darkness, channeling the energy they had once awakened. They realized that the only way to seal the entrance was to confront the very essence of the ancients and embrace the light within. In the midst of the chaos, Dr. Reed remembered the stone tablet, its symbols resonating with power. He reached for it, raising it high above his head as the chamber erupted into blinding light. "This ends here," he shouted, channeling the energy of the ancients. The darkness writhed and twisted, resisting the light, but Dr. Reed stood firm, the memories of his friends guiding him. He knew that the darkness could never be fully vanquished, but it could be contained. With a final surge of energy, the light engulfed the chamber, pushing the shadows back into the depths from which they came. The Seeker screamed as the darkness consumed him, and the chamber fell silent. As the dust settled, Dr. Reed and his team stood in the aftermath, the air heavy with a sense of finality. They had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, but the shadows of the past would forever linger. They sealed the entrance to the abyssal depths, knowing that the secrets hidden within would remain buried. Dr. Reed felt a sense of closure wash over him, but he also understood that the legacy of the ancients would live on in the hearts and minds of those who sought knowledge. In the years that followed, he continued to share their story, a warning against the dangers of ambition and the darkness that lurks within. The world above thrived, unaware of the secrets hidden beneath their feet, but Dr. Reed remained vigilant, ever watchful for the signs of the Great Awakening. As time passed, Dr. Reed found solace in his work, sharing the lessons learned from his experiences. He mentored a new generation of researchers, instilling in them the importance of respect for the past and the power of knowledge. One evening, as he sat in his office, the shadows seemed to dance around him, and for a moment he felt the presence of his lost friends. They had become a part of him, guiding him in his quest for understanding. "We will never forget," he whispered into the silence, a promise echoing in the stillness. As he looked out into the night, he knew that while the darkness would always linger, so too would the light of knowledge and the strength of those who dared to seek the truth. Yet, as Dr. Reed continued his work, he couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness was not truly gone. Whispers echoed in his mind, remnants of the ancients calling out, a reminder of the delicate balance between light and dark. Years later, as he prepared for another lecture, he received a strange letter, a cryptic message urging him to return to the mountains. The handwriting was familiar, igniting a flicker of hope and fear within him. "They are awakening again," it read. "The darkness is not finished with us." Dr. Reed's heart raced as he realized the implications. The cycle of darkness and light was far from over, and the secrets buried beneath the earth still held the potential for both destruction and salvation. Gathering his team, Dr. Reed felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. The past could not be ignored. It had shaped their present and would ultimately dictate their future. "We must go back," he announced, determination shining in his eyes. "We have to confront whatever lies beneath once and for all." As they prepared for the journey, Dr. Reed felt a sense of purpose rise within him. This time, they would not simply seek knowledge. They would protect the world from the darkness that craved release. The journey back to the abyssal depths was fraught with anticipation. The mountains loomed overhead, a silent witness to the secrets hidden beneath the earth. As they descended into the cavern once more, Dr. Reed felt a familiar chill wrap around him. "Stay alert," he warned his team. "We don't know what we're walking into." As they moved through the tunnels, the whispers grew louder, echoing in their minds. The shadows flickered at the edges of their vision, teasing and taunting them as they ventured deeper into the heart of the cavern. When they reached the grand chamber, the atmosphere crackled with energy. Symbols on the walls pulsed, and the remnants of the cult's rituals lay scattered across the floor. "We need to be careful," Dr. Reed cautioned, sensing the weight of the darkness pressing in around them. But before they could regroup, the shadows erupted into a whirlwind, coalescing into the figure of the Seeker once more, his eyes blazing with fury. "You thought you could seal me away forever," he taunted, his voice dripping with disdain. "The darkness will rise again." Dr. Reed stood firm, ready to confront the embodiment of his fears. "We will not let you awaken the ancients," he declared, rallying his team around him. As the darkness swirled around them, Dr. Reed felt the weight of his past failures pressing down on him. The whispers of the ancients grew louder, urging him to surrender, to join them in the void. "Fight it!" he shouted to his team, rallying them against the encroaching shadows. Together, they focused their energy, channeling the light they had discovered within. Dr. Reed reached for the tablet, its symbols glowing with renewed power. "This time, we will end this," he declared, raising the tablet high. With a surge of energy, the light erupted from the tablet, clashing against the darkness. The Seeker screamed as the forces collided, the chamber shaking with the intensity of their struggle. In a final, desperate push, Dr. Reed and his team focused their will into the light, breaking through the darkness and forcing it back. The Seeker's screams echoed in the chamber as the shadows dissipated, leaving behind silence. As the dust settled, Dr. Reed felt the weight of the ancients lift. They had faced their fears and emerged victorious, but he knew that the darkness would always remain a part of their legacy. With heavy hearts, they sealed the chamber one final time, a promise to protect the world above from the horrors that lay beneath. Back in the world above, Dr. Reed dedicated himself to sharing the lessons learned from their harrowing journey. He spoke of the importance of knowledge, the dangers of ambition, and the eternal struggle between light and darkness. As he looked out into the horizon, he felt a sense of peace wash over him. They had faced the darkness together, and while it would always be a part of their history, it was the light of understanding and connection that would endure. And so, with every story he shared, the legacy of the ancients transformed into a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the face of darkness, the light within would always guide their way.